Dear friends, we're opening the Forum of Innovative Financial Technologies Finnopolis 2018. Financial technologies are developing very actively and they are changing the landscape of financial sector. Our citizens, our businesses have an opportunity to receive a high quality of financial services in a faster and more efficient way. And I'm very happy to welcome all of you in this room, because thanks to you and thanks to your effort, the financial sector is changing for the better. Modern business models based on financial technologies and are client-oriented and are focused on new formats of financial services will definitely make our financial sector competitive and prosperous. We're holding this forum for the 4th time already, and over this time we've seen a true cryptocurrency fever, and luckily it is coming down now. And over this time, technologies like blockchain have provided for huge enthusiasm, and we believe right now we are much more careful and sober in perceiving of that technologies, and the businesses are working hard to enhance those technologies, searching for the practical cases for implementation of them. ICO is a great tool for raising financing for new projects and creation of new products and services. However, we do see that at an early stage, this tool was not protected and secured enough from the possible fraud and were used to abuse the trust of investors. But the key thing is that over the very short time that has passed since the first forum we've hosted, we see a change in perception of financial technologies. We do see that financial technologies become a new norm of the financial world, and it is no longer a world of advanced consumer, it is a world of general consumer. And of course, we do see the attitude of regulators change globally. We see a great diversity of opinions, from a complete liberalization up to a very rigid ban on certain financial technologies. And the position of certain regulators have been changed between two opposites. But at the same time, we do see a better understanding of new technologies in the world, as well as the perception of the risks connected with the introduction of those technologies. The potential goes primarily to financial accessibility, higher quality of services for business and citizens. As for the risks, those are, of course, the risks of personal data protection, cyber threats, protection from possible fraud, and the abuse of financial technology and their use for money laundering. Despite all those open issues, we are still very hopeful and are truly inspired by the development of financial technologies. And in many regards, I'm happy to say Russia is even going ahead or keeping pace with many countries. According to the data of Ernst & Young, Russia is ranked among top 3 from the viewpoint of penetration of financial technologies in big cities. Although according to the data of other companies, we're lagging behind in digitalization of businesses as such, in digitalization of state services. However, we do have big potential, and that is recognized by everybody. And the level of penetration of internet, penetration of smartphones, all that provides us with great hopes and allow us to be optimistic looking into the future. Of course, the regulator and the Central Bank of Russia is facing challenging objectives in respect of the support of development of fintech. That is a very tight process that we have to go through. On the one hand, we need to do our best in order not to suffocate the fintech by over-regulation. On the other hand, we need to be careful in order not to oversee the risks that might pose certain problems to our citizens and to businesses. It is therefore very important for us that the approaches to regulation are developed together in cooperation with businesses, with companies, and that is why we hold this forum on an yearly basis, so that together with you we can discuss the key issues, challenges, problems and objectives that we face. We've created an association of financial technologies so that together with all the market players, together we could experiment and better understand those technologies. We've created regulatory playbooks or sandbooks, and we believe that financial technologies can only be developed based on an open dialogue in an atmosphere of trust between the government, between the regulator and businesses. Talking of the approaches to regulation, we all understand it very well that our financial sector was developing rapidly and lavishly back in the 90s. And we do see certain structural disbalances, like a very large share of big players on the financial market, a large share goes to the government, and we definitely would not like the financial technologies to worsen those disbalances or to keep it the way it is. And on the opposite, we do not want those disbalances to stand in the way of development of financial technologies. That is why we as a regulator are very active in promotion and creation of elements of critically important national infrastructure for financial market development. That includes remote identification, fast payments, the infrastructure for digital profile, because we believe the availability of such national infrastructure will enable us to make an even play field for different participants of the financial market. And we have very high hopes for the fact that the financial technologies will become a very serious driver for development of competition on the market. That is why this platform we would like to discuss a whole range of issues that we probably haven't been given enough of attention before. That, of course, covers the creation of infrastructure, financial market, RegTech, SubTech, the technologies of insurance. The issue of preparation of staff is a critical issue, of course, and such important issues as protection from cyber risks. We do hope that in the course of this forum, together with the participants of the market, we'll be able to develop a joint position and a joint vision regarding our objectives. Only through common effort will be able to make progress. I hope that you will like the program of today's forum. I hope you will be having fruitful discussions, and I wish you all a very successful forum. And hereby we begin and open the Finopolis 2018. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we're opening the first plenary discussion, New Competitors and New Alliances, FinTech as a driver of competitive market development. Please welcome onto the stage the moderator of the plenary session, TV host, PBS NewsHour special correspondent, Ryan Chilcote. Chairman of the Board of Alpha Insurance, Peter Arvin. Deputy Chairman of the Government of the Russian Federation, Maxim Akimov. Principal Research Scientist, the MIT Initiative on the Digital Economy, George Westerman. Chairman, Chief Executive Officer, Chairman of the Executive Board of Sberbank, Herman Gref. Chairman of the Management Board of Rosbank, Ilya Polikov. Founder and Chairman of the Board of Directors of Tinkoff Bank, Oleg Tinkov. Governor of the Bank of Russia, Elvira Nabiulina. A very good morning, dear everybody. It is a great honor for me to be a moderator of today's plenary session. I believe it should be a truly lively and exciting discussions, as we all would like to have it. As you see, we have a very distinguished panel of experts. And probably they do perceive one and the same discussion in different manners. And it is great that we also have the governor of the central bank with us. So the topic of our today's discussion is how fintech can be a driver of development of a competitive market, new competitors and new alliances. In the course of the discussion, would like to touch upon a number of initiatives that are going from the Central Bank of Russia. That includes the express payment system, the system of remote identification, issues of data management and data processing between private sector and public sector. And I do hope that you will find this discussion interesting, and hopefully we'll be able to answer all your questions, even if we won't be able to give you an opportunity to ask questions. If I may, I'd like to make a very brief introduction and react to what Madam Nabiulina spoke about. Talking about state participation in financial sector, you said that in the financial sector of Russia there is a large share going to the government, and that is true. Russian state banks control around 60% of the financial industry, depending on the statistics that you choose. Do you really think it is a big problem for the development of financial innovations when state banks have such a large share of the market and indeed extensive opportunities for development of their digital services on their own, without your support or without any shared system on the market, simply due to their big size? Thank you for your question. I believe that is indeed one of the fundamental questions for development of financial technologies. Not the only one, but indeed one of the fundamental. We face two problems immediately. Those are a large share of the government in the financial sector and the size of those state players. We have a number of big players and also a large share of smaller players. And I would say the second problem is even more important for the development of financial technologies. If we talk about platform solutions and creation of ecosystems, that requires serious investment. And that type of investment can mostly be done by big players. And we do see that the financial institutions that were faster in development of fintech, development of their businesses based on remote services and digital technologies, they do face that type of problems when they realize that they need platform solutions. And we see that those lone riders in the ocean of digital technologies are only the big players. Only they can overcome all those hurdles. So what can be done in this situation in order to create equal playground for everybody to develop those technologies? What is the way not to interfere, not to kill those initiatives and technological leadership demonstrated by the big players, and at the same time avoid new type of monopolies? The situation is further worsened by the fact that we also have problems in the issues of staff. What is fintech? Primarily, those are people, highly qualified personnel. And we do see that new companies being set up by the true experts and inventors of fintech are quickly acquired by big players. So there are issues in this regard, and of course different approaches can be used. Roughly speaking, there are three key types of approaches. The first one, the government does not intervene, and we just let it go the way it goes. Those private initiatives grow and develop, and we simply watch. And we realize that in the best case scenario, we would have 2 to 3 big ecosystems that would be covering all others. In the best case scenario, 2 or 3 ecosystems. The second option, the government would overtake all the initiatives and would set up and develop all the technologies and infrastructure, and what we would get is a state monopoly. The third approach, and the one that we find most preferable, is that the elements that require infrastructure and are important for all market players are set up either by the government or under the aegide of the government, and therefore an equal access to that is provided for all market players, and the rest of the decisions and solutions are delegated to the market. Well, the question is where we should have the national infrastructure, the federal infrastructure, and where is the place of private solutions. We believe that the general infrastructure is the system of remote identification, biometrical solutions, that's what we're doing now, and that provides any types of financial institutions grow and develop and render remote banking services. This is a system of fast payments that provides new opportunities for our citizens and access to financial services. That is infrastructure of digital profile for digital finance. We believe this is something that should be done on a federal, national basis. This infrastructure should be set up by everyone, and later on financial institutions should be left alone to freely compete based on those new services and new technologies. Thank you very much. A question to Herman Greff, if I may. Madam Governor pointed the problem of existence of big players as a possible hurdle to the development of new fintech. Well, I guess everybody knows that anyway, but Sberbank accounts for around 1/2 of all deposits accounts in Russia, 1/3 of loans issued. How do you see yourself? Do you consider yourself to be a hurdle on the way of development of innovations? Is that type of requirement, is that type of approaches that the governor talked about would be useful? The creation of system of national payments, fast payment system development, the system of remote identification, and the system of data management and creation of digital profile.
Hello. Everyone, for better, should speak for itself. I cannot see whether we're a hurdle or not. You'd better ask this question to players that played with us on the market. They would be more keen in answering this question. I don't see myself as a hurdle and my company. We are a driver. As for general infrastructure, it is more philosophical question. You know, there are two approaches, bottom-up and up to bottom. I advocate bottom-up approach. It's very difficult to have a working solution from up to bottom. Whether we really have underdeveloped financial sector, do we have problems with P2P, payments, transaction between citizens? No, I consider that Russian market is one of the best in the world as far as those two components are concerned. We are definitely better than in the US. We are definitely better than many of European countries. And we can be comparable with Nordics only. And very nice services are available in China. If we look at the world, I think that Russia should be in top 3 in the terms of financial services development. So the question is, what kind of problem are we solving? Do we have this kind of problem? No, we don't. Market access barriers. Yes, P2P system construction doesn't require heavy investments. There are standard solutions. And the appearance of many small players shows that market access barriers are low. And it's not so heavily regulated, that banking account. And the appearance of banks like Tinkoff shows that Tinkoff started as a transaction bank. It was not a mono bank, it was a transaction bank with credit cards. Now in the world, we separate fintech notion from bank notion. Fintech companies develop one technology, mono technology. Now, in the banking sector, we see a new phenomenon emerging, neobanks, when fintechs are changed into banks. allowing to provide all required services. Alec maybe will add to that. They started as monoliner. Now they are almost a comprehensive bank, providing all banking solutions possible. So to my mind, maybe the government should create a certain momentum when we see some areas being underdeveloped. But if we see that all the market is being developed, for me, the state should take a step back and oversee rather than heavily regulate, because otherwise the state can create impediments. Talking not from the abstract, but more from the precise point of view, two initiatives that trigger the economy and proposed by central bank. First, express payments system. It's a national infrastructure for express payments. Sberbank has its own system. Of course, it's understandable, and it covers many customers in Russia. Do you support the creation of national infrastructure, or you see it as a competition? That's first. Second, for you, the same problem may occur in case of remote identification system. When I come to Sberbank office, I register myself, and then I can receive banking services in any bank in Russia, and not only in Sberbank. Do you see this as a competition to you? First, as far as the size is concerned. Now, in the world, we see more and more M&As in every industries. Good competition, good competence brings consolidation. Tech giants and fintech giants were one day startups. Now they are giants, and they start to expand their activities. If you want to support innovations, you should heavily invest in them. That's first. Second, investments are not the most important factor. What is the most important factor is the presence of many highly skilled experts and the presence of flexible management model. It is more important than capital. We have companies that are more expensive than bankings. We can talk about natural resource companies. They don't suffer from the lack of capital, but they suffer from the lack of competences and highly skilled personnel. Now, high-tech companies win because of their smart management, because their ability to rapidly change business models. This is why they are winning. To my mind, we are focused on the wrong issue. I'm not saying that I'm against competition. I'm always for competition. And we support competition. As you probably know, we never acquired a single bank in Russia. This is not a simple declaration. I consider that Sberbank is so old because we were always competing against someone. Competition is the main driver for us. No one can drive us better than competition. We see that the central banks, if we see that a new central bank's rule is an impediment, we will adapt ourselves. But for us, impediment is wrong. But when we see our competitor proposing a new service, for us, it's a challenge. Russian market is highly competitive. We are not everywhere number one. We watch closely to our competitors. We respect them. It is very important to maintain this competition fire. Piotr? Bank is a commercial organization making money. And the strive of the bank to use its competitive advantage to create a closed system in-house, it is natural. I cannot criticize Sberbank. Sberbank is doing what is required by their shareholders, on one hand. On the other hand, the world is becoming more open. Internet and digitalization are two metaphors of the openness of the world. Closed private systems will disappear, and I'm absolutely sure that express payment system will be national. And in this context, the Bank of Russia is following the right route. It does something that is required by history. Biometric solutions. The central bank is right, and the central bank will win because it will be a closed system. I'm also opt for competition because monopoly establishments, they drive competition, not kill competition. Every hurdle triggers competition. When you fight against bank that has 50% market share, it is a promotion of competition and not the hurdle to it. I would like to participate in the debate, and I tend to agree with Mr. Avon. When we talk about digital development of our economy, the Central Bank of Russia is not a hurdle, it's an opportunity for every player on the market. The creation of infrastructure by main player, based on the main player, is not what we see right. It gives a strong competitive advantage to major players. We see that in Russia we have a good alternative for that, and by that I mean digital infrastructure supported by the central bank. And what the Central Bank of Russia is doing, I see it very positive. Let's take P2P example. P2P platform from Sberbank is a big advantage for Sberbank as far as competition is concerned, because many clients choose Sberbank and other banks because of the presence of this express payments system. And the central bank and its express payment system will be for the good of our citizens, because competition improves pricing for the final consumer. If we talk about unified biometrical solution, we are among of the pilots. And the farther the city is, the more people from that city connect to that system. In our bank, #1 city is Moscow, and among #2, #3 is Nakhodka from the Russian Far East. It gives me an idea that people from remote area strive for more competition among banks. This initiative is highly supported by us because it will make better the banking market. How many people use already this kind of identification? In Nakhodka or everywhere? Everywhere. I know it's a pilot program. We know that around 62 Rosbank offices all over Russia accept biometrical data from population. Next year, every office will do, and we are among the biggest bank accepting biometrical data. We promote it. I will show a video tomorrow on a panel session how we raise awareness about biometrical solution. But the percentage stays low. It's a pilot project. There are some issues with safety and security, but I see this technology as a prominent one. And our product development strategy is based on the fact that in the nearest future, many of our products will be available online using biometrical data. Please. I would like to make a quick remark. I tend to disagree with Mr. Gref that competition is high in the financial sector. We have historical issues, and the central bank is often criticized that due to banking resolution, we have more and more state banks and big players in the banking sector. And we hope that fintech will open this closed technology and develop competition. Big players are technological leaders. They really move the market forward. They move it forward. But we would like to see more cooperation with the central bank, not creating hurdles for competition, but in order to reach the farmost areas of Russia. This is why we do it. Without fintech, it wouldn't be possible in the future. This is why I have to do this remark. No, competition is not good in the financial sector. You mentioned before that without central bank, and you referred to, if I'm not wrong, to the creation of 2 to 3 big players. So my question is, whether it is a prominent activity, if you will do everything you want to do, what do you think about the impact of your initiatives? How will they impact competition? Do you have any specific figure to give to me? I'm talking about competitive ecosystem. What we see now, the competition will develop if technological innovations will be driven by something. Monopoly kills the strive to innovate in any sector, because everything seems to be good. Competition should be in place in order for competition to be in place. All financial institutions should have access to key technical solutions. I don't know what will be the amount of big players on the market. Yes, now we see some consolidations in banking system. As far as banking system is concerned, it will be happening in the future, and I tend to agree with Mr. Gref. Consolidation is on its way, but what is more important, consolidation should not limit the market only to 2 players, because competition is not possible between 2 players. It is important for the consumer. Now consumers receive services that they cannot dream of 2 or 3 years before: mobile payments, mobile banking, thanks including to our big players. But there is a problem of banking slavery. The government worked upon the abolishment of mobile slavery. What we are doing now is allowing people to use money in every bank, regardless of the bank having it. This is what we should think of, and we as a regulator, we want to receive feedback from the market. What shall we do in order to promote this slavery?
IT is focused on digital technology leadership and innovation. The central bank believes that by introducing the system of remote identification, by introducing a national standardized infrastructure for fast payments, it can increase competition in the financial sector. Is that how you see, is that what you see happening? And how do the individual banks, the individual providers of financial services change when you introduce these national standardized institutions?
So when you have these closed ecosystems, there is room in the market, as Madam Nabulina said, for 2, maybe 3. So, you know, we have Apple and Android, right? We've got Microsoft and Apple. In these big ecosystems, that's what happens. What's interesting about what you're doing at the central bank is trying to say, well, if we can put these modular interfaces between the digital identity and the transfer, we now move that ecosystem to the market as opposed to being owned by one or more companies. I think it's a really interesting idea. If you're the big players, though, what that means is if as you said, Madam Nabulina, you're trying to level the playing field, that makes it harder for the people that already dominate on the playing field, because they're winning in a world that may or may not be level. As you level it, the competition should move to being about products, not about the platform. And that also should drive competition then to the pricing on each product, which could be painful for companies that own the platform right now. The fintechs can suddenly get in with a lower price. Your competitors can take high-value products away from you. That can get scary. The identity is a really interesting one. I saw a bank in Singapore that, Singapore is a high-cost environment. When they got access to identity in India, the digital identity in India, they could then go end-to-end on every process without a single person in the loop. And so they could then move their retail banking services to India and make money off a savings deposit that's $10. $10 a month is the lowest fee you can get per month in the US. They can make a profit on $10 savings account in India just because identity was the last step where you needed a human in the loop there. So we should see costs go down. We should see a lot of argument over pricing. We should see products start to decouple across the large banks. So what's left for the large banks now? There's still an opportunity, and the opportunity is in twofold. One is you can win on capital. Every startup I know says, yeah, we got great technology, but boy, we'd love to have all the money that those big companies have, all the customers those big companies have. And second, even when we can separate the products, there's still an opportunity to put products together in a different way so your insurance can learn from your retail, or your mortgage can have collateral from other things. So then using AI and other there's an opportunity for large banks to reintegrate these products in bundles in a different way than you do now.
Олег Юрьевич, я хотел вот здесь услышать...
Mr. Tinkoff, if I may, I'd like to hear your position and your vision on that. We've heard two positions on the possible impact of such initiatives on the competition on the market and on the service providers. How do you see that in your bank? I know lately you talked a lot about your own ecosystem and how you try to promote lifestyle products. What is that? Is that your response to what George talked about? That in the future, banks would have to be more specialized on specific type of services in order to remain competitive under the new conditions? Well, first of all, as a follow-up to the continuation of a conversation, or rather discussion or a bit of a standoff between the central bank and the Sberbank regarding the system of separate fast payment systems. Well, I would say de facto Sberbank has a fast payment system. In our bank, as you said, in Tinkoff Bank, we have different positions on that. Our president and my partner, Oliver Hughes, believes that it is necessary to actively enjoy the support of central bank, that it is needed. Well, I believe that it won't give us any special benefits. And I agree with Mr. Greff that Sberbank is covering that anyway. And I guess we wouldn't create any extra value for our consumer. So that's the discussion we have, and it's great that we have this internal discussion in our company. Although I'd like to say that it is good as long as we have Herman Greff being the governor of Sberbank. And indeed, today he is quite restrained in his policy. He is not acquiring competitors, is not dumping, apart from some parts of the online acquiring. In some ways, probably those are disbalances due to the management, not personally to Mr. Greff. But nobody lasts forever. Let's imagine tomorrow Mr. Greff is no longer with Sberbank, the liberal, very advanced and truly smart and intelligent manager. What will happen next? Some guy would come there, and that's it. Indeed, it would all be over. Therefore, it is a difficult choice, but I would still take the side of Central Bank of Russia, of Madam Governor Nabiullina and Madam Skorobogatova. Indeed, we need to develop independent solution. We never know who would be the next CEO of the Sberbank. That would be my answer. May I have just a second? Well, Mr. Greff is very reasonable. He is not buying other banks. He's buying people and buying technological companies. Well, I guess, Oleg, you just told everybody that you will not sell Tinkoff Bank to a bigger player, and it is already a big contribution to the development of competition in our country. Well, I would probably disappoint some, or maybe assure others. Nobody can't buy anything apart from Sberbank. They're the one who have enough capital for that. But Mr. Gref cannot buy us due to his liberal position. So that's the full stop in this discussion. Well, okay, you might refuse to be sold to a bigger player, but Mr. Gref, on his side, in order to increase competition in the country, might say that he's ready to split Sberbank in several banks. Yeah, as for your question on lifestyle banking, indeed, we're developing this segment, and I'm happy to hear that even the representative of MIT agrees to that. Unfortunately, my son failed to enter to this. He was not accepted to MIT, and that is really sad. I'm very sorry about that. Although he's a bright guy, really, my son, probably the MIT has lost a lot, namely my son not being their student. But nonetheless, seriously speaking, maybe there would be just 2 to 3 ecosystems. Of course, that would be Sberbank, number 1. Who would be number 2 and number 3? That would be a very strong fight between Yandex, between us, between Alpha Bank. As strangely as it might sound, even Pochta Bank is going for that, although that is probably the largest offline ecosystem and they could stay there. But this fight and this struggle would be very hard, and we understand that it is necessary to give all the conveniences to our consumer. We believe if a bank is truly successful, it cannot be that their mobile app is open up, let's say, once a week or once a day. We want our mobile app to be truly top of mind, truly sophisticated, and that's why we develop lifestyle banking. We want our clients to get a full scope of financial services and other services that are in a way connected with their lifestyle. Well, if we go to extremes, all the transactions can be split into 2 types. The necessary type of transactions, state duties, payments, taxations, utility bills, and that type of payments that we don't like, but we have to do. And the other type is something we love, spending on lifestyle, on cinemas, theaters, entertainment, and vacation. So we want our mobile app to be used for both. In our app, you can book a table in a restaurant, you can buy a ticket to a cinema, you can buy a ticket to many other events. That's why we acquired the largest integrator of ticket sales. That's Kassir.ru, that's the Russian version of Ticketmasters. So we want our customers to use our mobile app in a much broader way rather than for some simple financial transactions. And we were the first to launch stories among banks. And we were the first to do that in a banking segment. And we see that our customers like that. This is developing, and some of our colleagues are updating their mobile apps, and we see that they are following into our footprints, and it's nice to see. It means that we've spoken the right pathway. So lifestyle banking and creation of ecosystems of platforms is basically one and the same thing for us. And that is why that's where we're heading to. We understand that in a modern world, there will be no place for banks and non-banks. I would say it would be more of an ecosystem and an environment. And while we have such players like Google, Yandex, Microsoft, Amazon, we have to be prepared for that, for the time when they actually do come to this market. Mr. Arvin, I cannot but notice that in the course of the discussion you talked to Madam Nabiullina. Maybe you would share your discussion with us and express your position. Position on what? Well, I simply asked Mr. Arvin whether they will develop an ecosystem. Well, I believe Oleg is right. That is inevitable for any bank, and I'd like to support the discussion on small banks and big banks. Several years ago, it was a very hot topic. Banks like Tinkoff would be winning in competition. They are fast, they're mobile, and very inventive. But what we see so far, Oleg Tinkoff, an outstanding entrepreneur, but he is just like one just one around there. And we see that now the trend is changing, and the technological leaders today are big banks. And when we compare fintech and banks and put them on the opposite, that's not quite right. I don't have the figures for 2018, but in 2017, 60% of investment in fintech was done by banks. And what we see right now is that a bank is being transformed from a purely financial institution into a technological company. And the transformation that we talked about requires a lot of money. And we see it on the example of the United States today, where four biggest banks, JP Morgan, Los Fanga, Bank City, and Bank of America, are growing 2 times faster than the market grows, thanks to digitalization first and foremost. Because today, banks understand that it is necessary to create those technological structures within. And outsourcing is going away. And in Alpha Bank, there are 2,000 people in working IT. That's 10% of all the employees. I believe in Sberbank that would be more than 10,000 people. And that is a big advantage of big banks. And I would say big banks definitely should do that. That's the great advantage they have, being able to create an ecosystem so that their customers can use a bank as a tool to organize and structure their life. And digitalization is basically comprised of 3 things: internal digitalization, decreasing costs and expenses within the bank, communication to the customer, and the third thing is the creation of ecosystem as such. All those 3 segments will definitely be developing. And I believe big banks are acting as drivers of this progress. Deputy Prime Minister Akimov, would you please express the position of the government on this discussion? Well, I would say that I feel most comfortable in this discussion. I'm not a regulator of the financial sector, and I'm not a market player that has to lead this very complicated discussion, talking about the advantages and disadvantages of different parameters and sizes of the banks. What I believe to be important in this discussion is to comment on 2 things that have very serious consequences. The first thing I wanted to say, if we talk about ecosystems and what is needed for those ecosystems from the side of the government, the first one would be creation of architecture connected with the national system and harmonization of data in order to create affordable, harmonized, and accessible data for creation of mobile apps. Part of this work is creation of full-fledged digital residency of people, things, and a full-fledged system of biometric data and a single system of identification. That is a very important thing. And one cannot say that so far those objectives are fully resolved. And the architecture of data that would enable us to use open interface, open code, and create it within the ecosystem of state services. We have more than 65 million of online customers that are doing billions of transactions per year. I think that is a very important objective that would open up new perspectives for the businesses, for integration and development of apps and different services on the one hand, while on the other hand, since we also need a lot of data in order to customize our services, in order to do more precise and accurate location of our resources, in order to render targeted social services, we need high interoperability of data and presence of businesses in our platform. The second thing that I wanted to comment on is regulation in the area of data processing. Apart from all the discussions that are ongoing, and it's good and proper that we're having it, and we should be in no rush with regulation in this regard, talking about the publicly available data that users are making publicly available voluntarily on social media or somewhere else. What I'm talking about is data gathered due to the legal requirements. We leave a huge amount of data by working with different state systems. That is the different utility payment system, transport and logistics systems, where transporters and carriers leave a lot of geolocation data. That is all the data gathered whenever the state registration of any transactions is happening. And it is very important that the use of this data is non-preferential and non-discriminatory, so that nobody has an opportunity to create a digital monopoly on the market based on the advantageous access to those data. That is the objective that we face, to prevent that from happening. And another very important objective is to become truly digital in our essence, in our core. We need to shift from digital government, where it is more or less clear what to do. We'll just do some fine-tuning, but generally it's all clear. We need to shift towards the actual digital government, a digital state, and to the state management based on digital. If Tinkoff and Sberbank are making decisions based on data analysis, and on the efficiency of operations of specific managers, then that's not what our state is doing so far. But we have huge flows of data at our disposal, and we want to become truly digital. It takes certain courage and a lot of changes to processes, to our internal processes, and only in that way we'll be able to create a customized product and create new services for our citizens, and finally decrease costs and expenses. That is what I would say is important, not just for fintech and financial market, but generally for all other industries. As for the rest, you can calculate it, you can read it into the program of digital economy, and I invite you to read this document. Thank you very much, Mr. Greff. If I may, since we started talking about big data and big data management and analysis, we've heard that there is a lot of data gathered by the government. What is the way to provide equal access to this data for all players when it makes sense, and when a person in possession of this data, person agrees to processing of their data? I've read that there are around 340 of such systems in our country, and I believe that's a very big data, 340 GISs. Does Sberbank need any special system where you would regulate data processing between public authorities and private sector, or it is all fine in Sberbank with your customers' data? Well, first of all, I'm not saying that we're against any initiative of the central bank. Actually, we don't care. We don't care in a way that our philosophy is to win in the competition irrespectively of any external circumstances or factors. If there are any restrictions adopted, that would be bad if those restrictions would be against us. That wouldn't be very favorable, and that could stand in the way of the development of our company and financial sector as such. If there are any restrictions adopted for everybody, well, we don't need any preferences. Our objective is to win in competition under any circumstances, any regulation, and any crises. So whatever the regulation is, we will win. If it is the opposite, we will win anyway. The whole system is aimed on that, the system of operations in our company, irrespectively of external conditions. Mr. Greff, if I may, now let's talk about remote identification. Do you perceive it as a threat that I might come to your bank office? In a financial view, is that a threat for you that I might come to your bank? There is no threat at all. So you'll get money for registration? 200 rubles per person. Well, that's not the money you can make a fortune on. That is a very simplified perception that we're fighting for financial flows. That's not the case. Financial flows is not an objective per se for us. The key objective for us is our customer and the customer satisfaction. If our customer is satisfied, then sooner or later, it will all be fine in finances as well. And if everything is fine in finances, but the customer is not happy, then sooner or later you would go bankrupt. So the key and the first thing is our customer. And the key thing for us is flexible management system that enables us to adapt to any changing conditions. And creation of flexible management system is a very big problem. And the bigger the company is, the harder it is to create such a flexible system. Do we need any extra data as compared to what we have now? Certainly we do. We have a lot of data at our disposal, but the profile of this data is rather flat, and the more we enrich our model with some out-of-the-ordinary data, the more precise the decision-making process is. And in this regard, we do need new types of data, but that's again not the key thing. We're learning to operate with the data we have. If we don't have any data, we'll work with the data we were left with, and we will learn to get a lot of information out of that. There is a company called Netflix. For me, it is simply a role model for how you need to work with flat data. I think Netflix is the most efficient with working with that type of data. They have very flat profiles, and they can get out of it a lot of useful information. What is really important is something that Deputy Prime Minister talked about. We don't live in a vacuum. It is very important for us to have digitalized services. If we have those geo-information system, let's say a tax service that is an amount to dramatically decrease expenses of tax administration, and what tax service has done so far is truly revolutionary in my view, and it is a huge decrease of tax burden, and companies like us are ready to get connected fully online so they never ever come to our office with offline inspections. We are happy to provide them with any information we have for them online and let them analyze this information, but we do not want to waste our time going through their tax inspections. Our direct business, mortgage loans. Right now, we work alone with registration authorities, and if our customer would be able in the course of 1 hour to choose an apartment, get a mortgage loan approved, buy the apartment and register a property right, and that's what we're aiming to, I think that would be a huge gift to our customers and to us. And I just shared a couple of examples, and we are connected with a huge number of state services. If all those services are digitalized, then we'll be able to save a lot of time for our customers and our own time as well.
We will receive lower margin, but we will have more services to provide. So our inner expenses will be lower, and the economy overall will be better and faster. In that context, we benefit from what is happening. Small companies will never be able to do so. We are like an icebreaker. And then these kind of services become available for everyone, not only banks, but for tech companies also. Why we are not afraid of competition? Because we were struggling through many years with digitalization. We know how hard it is. And we know that now people who say that digitalization is quick, it is not. It is a very complicated path. What is simpler, to create a company from the scratch or to digitize a non-digitalized company? For me, both ways are way complicated. When you mentioned about client being the first and the backbone of Sberbank, as I see the central bank's initiative on fast payments, then tariffs for transactions not within Sberbank, but between Sberbank to Tinkoff, let's say, this tariff will go down because of the national express payment system. Is it true or not? Is it good or not? The tariff will go down anyway. Will you do something? Wouldn't you do something? It just doesn't matter. Services will become cheaper. When the service can be replicated, the price will be cheaper. The first to come will be the first to earn. But as far as many players enter this playground, the price will go down. Transaction fee will be cancelled one day, sooner or later. Ada, I saw you nod in the head. And Madam Governor, I saw you nod in the head. Do you agree? Yes, I do agree. It is very important not to create a monopoly when the service is provided only by one company. In these cases, I'm not sure that the price will go down. All through the history of the economy, the monopoly never brought the prices down, and we will control in order to maintain the competition in this field. If I may, since my mic is on, I would like to comment on Deputy Prime Minister's biometrical data. We did a big step in it. It gives us an opportunity to our clients to receive digital services. Now we are promoting express payments system. But what about digital profile, digital residency? They are very important for digital economy per se. Talking about specific objectives for the financial sector, non-discriminatory access to data from all information systems belonging to the state is very important. When you have access to your personal data, when you can manage it to deny access or grant access, it is the next step from the infrastructural point of view that will allow us to promote financial technologies further. On my behalf, on the behalf of the central bank, and I hope market players will support, please, our dear government, place this objective high on your agenda. My quick comment, which is, I think, timely now, maybe I will start a small discussion, but now we think, it might seem strange to you, that in the index of digital government, we are ranked top 32 next to Israel, and Moscow is ranked #1 among digital cities. We would like to change this conception of digital service demands. We would like to create competences within the government of Russia. We feel that we will not be able to cope with the situation without architectural solution. The good technical specification now is more important than coding. And to my humble opinion, one of the biggest challenge is to bring competences in-house. How can we do that? I don't know, because we may risk to engage into the competition with the market. It will be definitely for the good of the market, but it is very important to have this kind of competences on board. Without those skills, we wouldn't be able to solve some big issues. It's an open page. Big data management. I have two questions. George, first will be to you.
You see with digital profiles when it comes to the financial sector?
Sorry, Ryan, could you say that again? I was listening here instead of listening to you.
You were listening to me in Russian. What dangers do you see with digital profiles when it comes to the financial sector?
So the digital profiles, you know, in an age of AI, the more data, the better. The more you know about anybody, the better you are. And you could think about the on a market side also that if you have the right profiles that become public, then other competitors can come in. You always come up against the privacy question. At least in the US where we are, privacy is a huge issue. And that's one of the reasons why these digital profiles don't exist. So you want to balance across that. The other question I think you want to have from the digital profiles is if the profiles become public information or publicly available information, where's the advantage for any one bank to learn more about you than other people do? And so you want to balance out from that side the confidential, the private information, the IP that banks are developing on you that they don't want to release to their competitors versus the stuff that they want to have as public so that the competitors and they can come into it.
Yeah.
And Oleg, second question to you. I read yesterday that Tinkoff Bank, together with the Megaphone, Mail.ru and Yandex, announced the creation of big data market participants. Whoa, 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 wait a minute. What this is all about? Gazprom Bank will be involved one day. Do you consider that there is a need to work together with tech companies and other banks in order to start creating an ecosystem of big data management? Because you don't see help from the government. What's the backdrop? Wow, this is for the first time I hear that. I'm more involved with the operational business. I should make a call to my colleagues. What an interesting news. How I see that, you know, without any doubt. Well, wait a minute. According to the article I read, the association that you entered yesterday is called to create unified principles of the management and stocking of the big data. Madam Nabiulina said that fintech is people, after all. I would like to say that fintech is people, best people. And I'm happy that I have very talented and smart people around me, and they do things that I don't even know. But I fully support this kind of initiatives. We should be integrated in all data sources. Big data is good, but what you should know how to work with them. The bigger the data is, the more precision the decision would be, and the more satisfied our clients will be, and the better we will be able to advise our client and to sell our product. We are ready to acquire big data. We are ready to pay for them. We are ready to exchange them with someone. So for me, the platform, the ecosystem, even the public ones, are good. And via our mobile app and our web portal has a feature when you connect to the Gosuslugi portal, state services. We work closely with Rosreestr, Russian Register Service, with Pension Fund of Russia. It is not easy always, but the progress is there. It's just something natural for the market. Big data rule and will rule. I said that already a year ago here at the same place. Too much phobia, too much caution about personal data. I lived in San Francisco in California for many years. I just don't care. I press OK. Everything I write online, everything I read, I understand that people can access to what I do in the internet. I think that privacy it has too much hype around it globally and in Russia. I see no issues with personal data. It's a big autonomous masses of information, no threats in them. They are well secured. I don't see any issues around it, really. It is just a tool allowing for big tech companies to simplify customers' life. This is for the customer, not against the customer. People reading you on Twitter, yes, they know that you like to be publicly present. I didn't tweet. I haven't been tweeting for 2 years. It doesn't matter. I haven't been writing in social networks for 2 years. It's a myth. I don't know why should you be humble. We have a big author, Alexander Griboyedov, who said, please, we are not boys. Why only other opinions should be sacrificed? We have our own to share with you. Alek touched upon a very important topic. When we talk about big data, and this issue is about data management, you should not decide for anyone how he or she will use his or her personal data. Personal data safety and security should be ensured, and it is my firm belief. Who among you accepting one banking service, then receiving SMSs from other services because you agreed to provide your personal data to your bank? This is how it is going on. Financial institutions will receive big data. We need to guarantee safety exchange of data. We need to guarantee non-discrimination in data access. And we should allow our people to manage their data. It is my firm belief. Once again, more and more people, I can imagine that, will be keen to share all their personal data, but not anyone. You should not decide for the society. You should give to everyone, every person, to disclose a part of all the data. Maxime, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, yeah, you should not only create legal framework, but to create technical solutions of access levels. When we receive loyalty cards, financial services, we sign papers without even reading them. And then we receive targeted advertising. Can we withdraw agreements that we gave? Now, no, it is not possible. And we don't have a possibility to digitally manage our personal profile. It is not technically possible so far. And I tend to disagree with you that there is no challenge here. The right to consciously make a choice how to use the data you are being sources of them should be granted to a person. This is my firm belief too. It should be a conscious decision for you to work in a safely environment. There are more sensible data than financial ones. Biomedical data, for instance. And one day we will come that Dr. Me will be the most important doctor for you. What does it mean? All your biomedical data will be available for you 24/7. Whether you want to grant access to anyone else, not within an aggregated big data for scientific researchers and so on and so forth. No, as for specific purposes of medical treatment. Whether you will be keen to share them, I don't know. This is why we have a unified position with the central bank, but there are many technical and regulatory issues that are yet to be solved. But I agree with you, Oleg, that you should not have any illusions. 90% of all personal data are already available. When we type something on our laptop, you should know that people can access to this information you're typing. Big data is a huge opportunity for banks and for everyone, but it's also a risky thing. And we see that for big companies, data protection issue is quite complicated. Don't forget the Facebook case. They were put under heavy pressure because of their data leakages. Do you remember many foundations advocating for the resignment of Mike Zuckerberg, regardless of his position? You should be very cautious while working with big data. In the broader context, talking about cybersecurity, information security, it is very important to invest as heavily in cybersecurity than banks do in innovation. Mr. Graf, you are bored a little bit, aren't you? You were not able to comment on the comment that mentioned your name. And since we don't have time for a Q&A session, I would use my position in order to ask an important question. Blockchain, cryptocurrency, maybe let's limit ourselves to blockchain. Forget about cryptocurrency. Now we talk about how fintech can drive competition in the financial sector. Does blockchain have a part to play in it? I'm not ready to answer your question because I don't know. I answered quite a lot of times on this kind of questions. Nothing has changed in my position. It is an amazing technology. It is a prominent technology offering many new opportunities, but the technology is yet to be ready to be used. When will it be ready to use? To my mind, in 3 to 5 years. If you will ask this question again in 5 years, maybe my answer will be different. The philosophy of blockchain changes many systems, and in the future it can give big value for businesses and societies. Cyber currency is a byproduct of this technology. As far as I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, it is the first technology being able to develop itself thanks to the byproduct within this technology. Cryptocurrency mining is a primitive process. Let's face the truth. It is called mining because it's all about commodity. Cryptocurrency is a commodity. I'm not very interested in it, but the technology is very prominent. I was always quite afraid of the following situation. If we kill cryptocurrencies, we could also kill many companies that are developing new technologies. It's an incredible phenomenon that should be thought of. We haven't had any example of technology developing thanks to the financial scheme within itself. Do I see bright future for cryptocurrency? No, I don't, because governments will not allow cryptocurrency in order not to cede their major roles as regulators. I think that in the next, let's say, 10 years, we will not see that. Maybe over a 10-year horizon, it would be possible. But for now, I don't see governments ready to abolish national currencies. Between killing and flourishing, there is a middle zone, the right balance for cryptocurrencies. Hype is over. So now we are more cautious about those technologies and blockchain. We do a lot of experiments for blockchain and in financial sector and in state governments. This technology is very prominent.
Олег, я знаю, вы хотели говорить на эту тему.
I know, Alec, you want to talk about that. About what, sorry? Oh, cryptocurrencies. Or maybe a blockchain. Well, I fully agree to what Mr. Graff has just said, and there is little left to add. And since Mr. Graff is a politically correct person, I would only continue to say that it is actually a political question. And I would say your country, the United States, is holding the whole world hostage via sanctions and finally via dollar. So until cryptocurrency is not controlled by the United States, it's not there. As soon it is controlled by the United States and the CIA, then it will be there in place. And I'm sure they would never give up the dominance of dollar either to Mr. Durov from Telegram or somebody else. That's a very interesting comment on geopolitics. Well, I would probably leave it aside for a moment.
To throw in your thoughts about this.
So listen, cryptocurrency is as
Как другой
valuable
представитель ЦРУ.
as anybody wants to make it, right? So
Я не сказал, что ты...
I didn't say that George is a CIA representative. Probably you are, just as our moderator has said. A comment from the CIA representative then.
I'm not getting paid very well, so cryptocurrency is as valuable as people want to make it. Why do we value gold? Because we value gold. So the markets will decide on that, and we can let that figure out. The blockchain itself is much more interesting, as Mr. Tinkoff said, because, and as Mr. Greff said also, because this idea of externalizing transactions that other people should know about, it's very important. So I'm seeing it, Mahindra in India is looking at it, putting blockchain for its entire supply chain so people can understand where products are. I've heard stories about trade credit, or Madam Nabulina had mentioned something about using blockchain to tell when a piece of collateral has already been committed to one loan, so it can't be committed to other loans. Those are very, very useful and interesting ideas. One more thing about blockchain now. Blockchain will come on and be important, but it's not quite there yet. And too many people now are trying to do blockchain applications for something that could be done just as well with a database. In fact, at MIT, we found this out. We tried a blockchain application. We are now doing a database instead. So you want to be careful about which one you go. A database is a lot easier, and it's actually a lot more efficient. Just because it's a cool new thing like blockchain doesn't mean you necessarily want to use that as your best answer.
Да, вы хотели...
Yes, you wanted to say something on blockchain and cryptocurrency. Well, I generally agree to all previous speakers. We also see blockchain as a promising technology, and together with the market, we're testing the technologies of distributed ledger, and we do recognize big potential in the registration of collateral and different solutions. What I believe to be very interesting is to analyze and understand why up until now there is this fashion for cryptocurrency. Probably just a coincidence of several requests, both from the market and the consumers. A request for fast money via cryptocurrency, a need for independency from the government that is also embodied in cryptocurrencies, a need for avoiding of capital restrictions of trans-border capital flow in a number of countries, is a need to fight money laundering in a certain way, and this need and want for new technologies. So that is simply a coincidence of several types of requests and calls that were witnessed. So it's different to differentiate between the actual meaningful technologies and some more weak fashions. So the key thing is technology that we need to work together with the market and the regulator. Yes, please. Well, I would say blockchain and cryptocurrency is something that we have a full consensus on this panel. I fully agree to everything that has been said, and I believe it is important to differentiate cryptocurrency and blockchain. We do believe in technology, and talking about global examples on the group of Société Générale, and we're part of this group, we are actively using this technology today in a number of areas, and the best example is trade financing. We've created a consortium with other banks and big international traders like Trifigura in order to service commodity trade finance transactions via blockchain. And those are actual existing deals. Those are not just talks. So we do see a future for this technology. Well, I believe we're running out of time. Oh, sorry. We don't need to close now. Any conversations on technologies are always closed with conversation on blockchain. Can we please finish on some other topic? Well, I actually wanted to give the floor to you to come to conclusions, or maybe you would lead our discussion into a different direction. Maybe we would rather listen to the market participants. I think Deputy Prime Minister and myself would be very interested to hear the position of our panel participants. What do you think is the key objective that the government should do and should not do? Because for us, the questions of financial technologies development is still a very open field for many of us. There are very many unanswered questions. And now we are working hard to understand how the world is changing and being shaped by financial technology. We can talk a lot about the trends, but for us as the representatives of the regulator, of the government, of the central bank, it is very important to set the right priorities in our actions to give the right impetus to the development of technologies. I would be very grateful if our colleagues could express their comments or suggestions. One or two things that you would be important recommendation for the regulators, what to do or not to do, do's and don'ts. First of all, I'd like to say once again that I believe the central bank as a regulator. No praising. All right, I won't praise you. Well, the first and obvious thing, you have to provide access to information that we still do not have up until now. Apart from a bank, I represent the insurance sector, and access to cadasters would provide much more easy ways to do appraisal of the property of our customers, for example. There are many unsolved questions in insurance issues. When we talk about the status of intermediaries online, there are many technical issues that are still unresolved. The issues of data processing and providing access to information is the key. Mr. Graf? What should the government and the regulator should do and what they should not do for you? Well, speaking about the regulators' actors, probably I first would say what they should not do. I would say it is an opportunity to motivate everybody to do something or not to do something that is something within the competence and the power of the regulator. So it would be great if they would focus on restricting their impact on the market and to actively prevent fraud on the market, of course, it is still an issue, and not to interfere into constructive business. I would say today we and the government need to have a clear vision of the architecture of the digital system that is to be created in Russia. And without that vision, it would be very hard to make progress. The program of digital economy is there, but still we do not have a finalized vision. Well, at least I do not see this clear vision. And it is very important before we start constructing something, we plan something properly, we do a design. And this is something that is very important for Russia today. Secondly is, of course, education. And first and foremost apply to higher education and professional education. As for school education, there we are more or less within the acceptable standards. Well, according to different ratings, we're definitely included in top 30 countries with the best school level education. As for higher education standards, we are dramatically lagging behind, and that is the key problem today. So I would probably say that education is probably the second biggest priority for us. We're spending a lot of money on educating our professionals, but still a lot of money is spent by the government today to educate the professionals that are not wanted by the market. That's a big problem. The third problem that I touched upon already is not to interfere or to work hard to create the atmosphere of trust. Very frequently, a regulator is acting from the presumption of guilt rather than the presumption of innocence. We say today that we're living in the era of customization. So if you're giving out and prescribing one pill to everybody from any disease, it will definitely not make it healthier. And the same applies to state regulation. Big data is there in order to finally give us customized offering, customized offers, and customized regulation. Sometimes regulator is aiming to cure a very small and specific disease, but by doing so is creating huge problems for the whole market. So smart, intelligent, targeted regulation based on deep analysis and proper interaction with the market and big data analysis is the third priority for today. Thank you. Well, briefly speaking, it is important to continue what is being done now. I would say the vectors selected by the Association of FinTech are the right ones. It is important to continue movement in this direction, and it is important that it continues in a voluntary manner as it is happening today. We should not push too hard to force businesses to join those initiatives. It should be a voluntary and free expression of will of the market players. And it is important not to create too much competition for digital talents. As we've heard it today, the government would probably also be hiring more and more digital experts, and this is probably the type of resource that is most limited for market players. Well, on the other hand, if in the government we would be having more and more digital talents, that would mean more efficient interaction with the private sector. So you mean developers and software engineers? Yeah, I mean software engineers, developers, and that type of profiles. All right. Oleg, what does a government and regulator should do and what they should not do? Well, I would say the following to my neighbor, Maxim. The government should provide equal access for everybody. At the very first Finnopolis in Kazan, I raised this issue. Equal access, equal affordability for having contact with the, for example, pension fund. I know that big players have easy relationship with the tax office, with the pension fund regulator, because they are connected with them as big banks, while smaller banks like us are still suffering. Formally, we have access to render joint services with them, but de facto, we are not able to get any efficient data from them. I raised this issue to Madam Nabiulina 6 years ago back in Kazan. Well, probably today Mr. Akimov would be able to support us. It is a lot of pain of interacting with Rosregister, with the Russian tax office, with the Federal Pension Fund. We cannot get any information from them in an efficient way. Formally, we are subscribed, we are online with them, but it doesn't really work. And if I may, Madam Nabiulina mentioned slavery on salary slavery and banking slavery. There is a federal law to prevent it, but it's still not properly implemented. And some of our colleagues and their management are doing everything in order to keep this slavery. And that's why we see big flows of the largest banks, let's say 2 or 3 months. We see those people getting their salary, they collect those salary and they shift it to our cards, to the cards of our bank. Everybody sees that, we see it, our colleagues see that, we see that those salaries are flowing from one bank to the other. This is the banking slavery for the payroll projects. We sometimes see that in some companies, management is basically imposing a ban to transfer those payrolls to other banks because they have commercial loans from those banks, and the conditions of those commercial banks are those payroll projects stays with us. And we need to fight against that. The regulator have to think of a way. Actually, that is a violation of federal law. But still, in implementation at the level of accounting departments and HR departments, that is happening. And I would say that is the challenge I present to the regulator. And I would agree to Mr. Arvin. He is right in raising a question that from the viewpoint of regulation of the banking area, the central bank has great results. But in insurance business, there is a lot of work left to be done. Well, I guess your question is what the government needs to do in the area of digitalization, but many other questions were raised. And if we talk generally, I would say the key problem and the key objective is lack of competition and non-competitive environment. So with a lack of competition, any efforts of the government to develop competition would be very positive. And everything that leads to decrease of competition is very bad. That's the law of economy. We need more competition. And if we see the predominance of state banks, we need to work hard to develop competition. And I fully support Mr. Tinkoff. We need to provide equal access for everybody, not just big banks, to the Russian Ross register, to tax authorities' data. It is an absolute priority. We are very much interested in competition. There are three of us, but basically speaking, those on stage, we have three single banks, and Poczta Bank probably as well, that are technology leaders. And that is terribly few. We need more, for sure. And that should be done, be that biometrical data collection or the fast payment system development. In order to move forward, we need competition development. All other purposes are secondary. The key is competition, in our environment at least. Okay, so homework is there. I noted down. I can report on what I wrote down, and hereby we could probably close the session. Many have asked for equal access to information, especially information from state agencies. They want clear vision of digital policy and program more clarity in the digital economy program, support in education, and education of the required experts to meet the market demand. We asked for more trust, the creation of atmosphere of trust, avoidance of over-regulation, and we've also heard at the very end a need to create and develop competitive environment, to do everything possible in order to develop competition. Here is your home assignment, Madam Nabiulina. And I guess hereby we shall close our session. Please join me in thanking the participants of this panel. Thank you very much for your support.